You know, Microsoft has always had a pretty tough time trying to get a foothold in the Japanese gaming market. Xbox just doesn't seem to perform well at all in Japan, bogged down by low sales and a lack of games that appeal to Japanese gamers. And maybe that's because, as games publisher NIS America suggests, Microsoft just isn't supportive enough of Japanese games.
Nippon Ichi Software, or NIS for short, are a Japanese publisher who specialise in publishing niche games like the strategy RPG series Disgaea. So put on your New York hat, Disgaea. That was bad. And the long-running JRPG franchise Ys. In recent years, NIS has been fairly successful in the West because of digital stores like Steam and PSN, which have made it easier for them to market their games to a Western audience. NIS have been successful enough to open a Western branch called NIS America, who are dedicated to localizing and selling niche games in Western markets. However, if you are exclusively an Xbox gamer, then you might not have seen any NIS games recently, and according to the head of the company, it's Microsoft's fault.
NIS America's CEO Takuro Yamashita told MCV UK, quote, "Honestly speaking, Microsoft's approach to Japanese games hasn't been very supportive. Microsoft, for Japanese games, there's still a very niche element to them, no matter what it might be. Yamashita believes Microsoft's corporate structure just isn't suited to Japanese games. And when it comes to placing orders, Microsoft only deal in big figures. He said, quote, Microsoft also has a minimum order quantity for their games, and their whole structure isn't really geared towards niche games or smaller games like Japanese titles. So they're not really supportive of Japanese games or developers. Japanese developers are also reluctant to develop for the Xbox because their primary audience is Japan, after all. And of course, Xbox just doesn't have a big enough install base in Japan to justify developing an Xbox version of their game. So as you can see, it is a bit of a vicious circle."
Nihon Falcom president Toshihiro Kondo told MTV that he isn't opposed to developing games for the Xbox One. The only problem is the limited install base in Japan, which means the platform isn't really viable for them. Kondo said, quote, "Falcom is obviously a Japan-focused developer, and looking at the situation in Japan, the Xbox has had a difficult time. Because the market isn't there, we have to take a if things improve attitude and just pay close attention to what's happening. So if the Xbox was to have a sudden rise in the West, we'd obviously be open to considering it in that situation. I'd really like that to be the case." Like we mentioned in the voiceover, it's a bit of a vicious circle, and the problem is if you don't get that initial kind of faith in the product and the console, if you don't get enough people buying the console when it launches, then it could lead to a very tricky situation because you don't have enough people with your console. Developers aren't going to produce games for the console because they're limiting their potential customers. So it can lead to a lot of problems if you just don't get that initial launch right of your console.
So what the guy's saying here is that Microsoft just isn't supportive enough of Japanese games, full stop, which I think is a bit unfair for some reasons we'll get into in a minute. However, it does seem to be the case that Microsoft needs big numbers. They need huge quantities of games, and we're living in an age now where Square Enix needs 6 million sales of a game for it to be successful. So it's that kind of quantity that they need, whereas a lot of these games, at least in the West, will just be fully like niche products. They'll have their audience, but it won't be a huge audience. And there's big games from this year like Nier Automata who've got this huge, really strong fan base, but it's not like a sprawling Assassin's Creed job where everyone is playing the game. And those are the kind of figures that it sounds like Microsoft are chasing at the moment. And these niche studios, they don't have the capacity to give them that.
It sounds to me like Microsoft need to change their outlook on this, because one thing they need more than anything is games, right?
Well, of course,
they're always screaming. People are always screaming, we need more games for the Xbox. Now, this would be this is a layup for them, isn't it? The potential audience might not be great, but at least it backs up alright, they're trying to sell the backwards compatibility factor. Yeah, play your old games. Well, why not offer JRPG games as well? Because a lot of people want to play those types of games.
It's all about choice, isn't it, at the end of the day? People just want to have options for what games they want to play and what platforms they want to play them on. Just because the Xbox isn't selling well in Japan, it doesn't mean that there are people here in the West who want to play those Japanese games.
I've got to be honest, playing a JRPG on an Xbox, I can't think of a worse combination. That is just me.
It's not like Microsoft has never tried to appeal to Japanese gamers, though. In fact, they've made numerous attempts in the past to win over the Japanese market. During the launch of the original Xbox in 2002, Microsoft made deals with Japanese developers like Sega, From Software, and Capcom to make exclusives for their new console. But these deals didn't really pay off for Microsoft, and the original Xbox only managed to sell 450,000 100,000 units in Japan as of November 2011. Xbox sales were in fact so disappointing in Japan that for 1 week in 2004, it was actually outsold by the PlayStation 1 by 4 units. It was even outsold by the Wonder Swan, a Japanese-only handheld gaming device from 2001, which didn't even have a colour screen.
Is it a swan-shaped thing?
No, it's kind of it's kind of lopsided. It's got a little screen. It's got 2 kind of dials on the left here. It's kind of like a Game Boy looking thing, Game Boy Advance looking thing, I guess. But that sold more than the Xbox in Japan. The Wonder Swan, which you've not heard of.
Microsoft could easily have given up at that point, but they didn't. For the launch of the Xbox 360, they managed to bag some highly anticipated JRPGs, Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon, exclusively for the 360. These games helped 360 sales a little bit in Japan, but ultimately it wasn't enough. The 360 was consistently outsold by the PS3 and the Wii. So it might be true that Microsoft are not supportive of Japanese games anymore, but they certainly have tried to be in the past. The Japanese market simply does not seem interested in the Xbox. If people aren't willing to buy your consoles, then it makes sense you wouldn't put much effort into catering to that market. We should point out the obvious here that Sony are a Japanese company, so people in Japan are familiar with the brand, they're familiar with seeing it around, Sony products here, there and everywhere, Sony PlayStation, that's familiar to them. So that brand image, that's why Sony PlayStation probably sells better than the Xbox. And the Xbox to them might seem a bit alien, a bit, some are removed from what they're used to. They might not know the Xbox.
There's also the fact that there's nothing handheld about the Xbox. So there's nothing that Microsoft are offering that you can take with you, which is like a huge part of the games market in Japan. That's why the Switch has partly been such a huge success, because you can take it with you. And they love the 3DS still there. It's one of the best-selling consoles there. And Sony have, tried to appeal to that with the Vita and the PSP and all that stuff going back. So they've at least looked at that and kind of seen the value there in Japan, because it's a big deal in Japan. It's just not the same for the Xbox. They haven't got anything that kind of caters to that. So the news is that Microsoft are ignoring the Japanese market. They're not being supportive enough of Japanese developers. I really can't say that that's fair, because they've definitely tried in the past. They've really tried to bring that onto their system, and it's just not worked for them. And if they are a business, so if it's not working for them historically, why would they kind of just try and keep doing the same thing and hoping that it works? Because it hasn't worked for them in the past. If it doesn't work as a business, then you move on, you try something else. That's all they've done. I would love to see more Japanese games on the Xbox. It would certainly help the Xbox lineup. Basically, just exclusives are shite in general for gamers, aren't they? So you just want everybody to be able to play whatever they can, no matter what system they're on. So ideally, we'd see more Japanese games on the Xbox.
So this is the Saturday show, and it's that time of week again. We're going to take a look at some of your comments. Enjoy.
So first up on IGN owns Humble Bundle now. Victim says, Humble Bundle, blink twice if you're in danger. Yeah.
We have a conspiracy theory going on there.
There was a lot of reaction to this story, wasn't there? A lot of like, oh my god, what's going on here? But it is definitely, no matter which way you look at it, no matter what you think is going on, it does feel a bit weird to have Humble Bundle,
who were awesome,
related to IGN.
Who were not awesome. So one of our patrons commented on their Patreon creator page, does Gareth know that the salute is properly rendered with the right hand? I noticed that he always uses his left. I double checked to make sure this isn't a US-UK difference, and the British Army also uses the right hand. Sorry, just a small thing that bothers me when I see it. I've never been in the army.
Embarrassed.
I've never been in the services. Like, why do you think I have to do the same as like the military services? Obviously, if I was in the military, I'd be
not doing this. Being in the military and
I'd be excluded from the military for saluting with the wrong hand, wouldn't I? This is my salute. It's my services. I don't know what else to say. Like a good way of saying goodbye to somebody, because it shows a little bit of respect.
Commenting on one of our midweek roundup videos, Cameron Grant says, I love catching the moments when Abe Gareth just clearly drifts off into his own world. Anytime Mike's talking for more than 20 seconds, lol happens at least once per video, and it's hilarious.
He's absolutely right, though. I do that, and that is just me. Like, I'm just my brain working. Like, I've obviously got a thought, and it's literally the cogs going in my brain. Yeah. You know something juicy is going to come up when I start having that look, because I'm brewing something. That's what it is. But the fact he called me Abe Gareth, that's catching on. Like,
what is this? Abe Gareth?
Like, it's the Lincoln of the games industry. I mean, it wasn't me. It was a guy on Twitter. On the same video, Christoph Asmaski says Gareth Mandela. Well, it's not me saying these things.
It's just spiraling now, isn't it?
It's not me saying these things. You know,
but you are picking them out of thousands of comments.
If somebody called you Mandela, it might pique your interest there, Mike. Mike Mandela? No. Doesn't have the ring to it.
But Gareth Mandela does. And commenting on this is why this game is online only. Hello says, does Jizz, or whatever his name is, the one that likes puns, does he write the script and put the puns in for the other one to say? Well, his name is not Jizz. It's not Jizz, I can confirm that. The puns are just... I mean, it's a lot of them are this guy, but they just come out of whoever, you know.
We've got a really good team in there.
We've got a process, man. This is a team effort. It's not like some evil scheme. Gareth is not like just trying to like ruin my life by just adding puns everywhere. At least that I know of.
Jizz.
I mean, yeah, I don't know who Gareth
did he get that from. That's better than Mandela, surely. Or worse, I don't know.
I thought it was going to be Jake, because of the J.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? J.
It's got a Z, the Gaz. Jizz Mandela.
Let's read another one. Okay, so you're an Xbox gamer. Would you like to see more Japanese games on your console? Let us know down in the comments. Just remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, and please do subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this every day. Another video right there, which you can watch right now. And of course, the link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. See you next time.